Yun, mga kameta! Kamusta kayo dyan? Magandang hapon, magandang araw. Guten Morgen! Kamusta kayo? Buenos dias! Yung mga kasama natin from all around the world, from California to Saudi Arabia, Europa, everywhere. Thank you for joining us. Ayan, today medyo maaga tayo at medyo bilisan natin. Marami tayong gagawin. So first of all, mukhang kailangan pa natin ituloy no yung discussion natin about what Leni Robredo should do when it comes to the troll problem. Trending na naman si Kim Jong-un boy, troll boy kanina, because it looks like more and more people want Leni Robredo and the opposition to take a tougher stance against itong fake news peddlers at saka itong whole cottage industry na yan. More than that, of course, pag-usapan din natin yung something I've been discussing for quite some time or kind of alluding to, which is yung budget cuts no dun sa mga malaking universidad katulad ng University of the Philippines, a proposed budget cuts pala, or gutting out for that matter, and also yung mga iba't ibang mga mahalagang ahensya sa gobyerno. Pag-usapan din natin yan. But before that, of course, today, pumanaw po si Mikhail Gorbachev, the former leader of the Soviet Union, the reformist, liberal-minded Russian leader, one of the very few in history of Russia, entire history of Russia. You know, Mikhail Gorbachev was really something different, cut from a completely different cloth in that sense. So, pumanaw po siya at the age of 91. Pag-usapan natin more yan in the coming days, hopefully closer to Russia geographically, God willing. So, I'll talk about the legacy of Gorbachev soon. But today lang, gusto lang natin magbigay ng respeto dito kay Mikhail Gorbachev, one of the few Russian leaders who truly understood that modernity is not about tyranny. Modernity is not about hyper-nationalist, imperialistic, proto-fascist ideals. But modernity is about making sure that the basic dignities of every citizen is protected. No? What's the use of having the biggest army? What's the use of having the best technology kung yung average citizens ng bayan mo live in darkness? Rather, live in a cloud of misinformation or are under the boot of tyranny and authoritarianism. And that's what's something that Mikhail Gorbachev tried to correct. Now, of course, we can discuss about how things went wrong for Gorbachev when he tried to open up the Soviet system, because that actually facilitated the collapse of the entire Soviet empire. Nonetheless, guys, Mikhail Gorbachev has been one of the most influential and some would say one of the most kind-hearted world leaders we have had in recent memory or the past half a century. No, at least, no. So we'll talk about more about Mikhail Gorbachev's legacy soon. But for now, balikan natin yung sarili natin bayan, Pilipinas. Marami po nangyari. So, ayan, nag-trending na naman si Kim Jong-un, boy! Ito naman. Ito yung kape natin. Kinokontrol ko yung kape ko. Baka mag-ana naman tayo katulad ng kaapon. Ano na naman tayo dyan? Ayusin natin yan. Ayan na naman. Kakalat na naman tayo dyan. Ay, nako. Ito. So again, guys, we have to pay respect to Mikhail Gorbachev, our hearts and prayers with his family and loved ones. And may his legacy, no, his universally acclaimed legacy, hopefully inspire a new generation of leaders in Russia. Alam niyo nang pwede kong sabihin dun sa tatay nila sa Russia ngayon, pero ibang usapan na yan. So we'll talk about that soon, more of that. But I would say Mikhail Gorbachev is one of the few Russian leaders who are really universally respected. Not universally feared or universally derided, but universally respected. He was not a perfect man. He was politically not the most successful guy. Still, guys, what Gorbachev did change world history forever. Okay? So, yon. Now, going back here, ayan. I think, guys, eto na talaga. It's very clear that yung mga supporters ni Leni, yung mga nasa opposition, or maraming tao na nasa gitna lang at pagod na dito sa mga marites na divisive, eto mga marites na divisive based on fake news. All right, let's be very clear. And what does fake news mean? Completely based on fabrication and intended to really poison political discourse, right? So let me be very clear about this, okay? Okay, let me be very clear about this. I mean, fairness sa Kim Jong-un na totoong Kim Jong-un ay ako na magpunta dyan. Basta, Kontrolin lang natin sarili natin. Kalmado lang tayo, kalmado lang. Basta hindi pwede yung radical love lang. Okay, you know, I'm all for compassion. All for understanding. I'm all for reaching out. Tama yan. Completely agree ako dyan. Talagang dapat we reach out sa ating kababayan. We have respectful, mutual respectful conversations. Hindi yung let me, ano yung tawag doon? Let me educate you. That's not radical love, alright? Ayoko naman yung marahas. Ayoko naman yung tough love lang all the time. But guys, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Ay nako. Madam, je miss you. Hindi pwede radical love lang dito. Something has to be done. We need to leverage the rule of law. Abogado si LENI. Abogado yung mga nasa paligid niya. I'm sure they know what they can do with that. Now, obviously, the law is not perfectly implemented in reality, given na yan. But that doesn't mean you should not leverage legal institutions. You should not leverage judicial institutions. You should not leverage the rule of law to ensure na hindi na pa-poison, no? Ano na yan guys, pinapoison na yung wellspring of democratic discourse Paano naman tayo kung puro mga ganyan diskurso guys? Dapat something is done about this. Hindi pwedeng nasa Twitter lang na statement na this is not true, this is fake news. Hindi na gumagana yan. Hindi rin pwedeng sabihin, let's be loving, caring. Hindi gagana yan. There has to be some house cleaning. There has to be some proper organized struggle here, okay? Hindi pwedeng ganyan. So clearly, even yung mga hardcore supporters nila LENI and all, they're already calling for more decisive action. Pagod ng tao dito sa what's perceived as lack of decisive response. Kailangan decisive ang response. In fact, it was precisely the perception na walang decisiveness yung isang kampo ay nag-explain bakit nanalo yung kabilang kampo. Sabi ko nga, ang hanap ng taong bahay ngayon sa Pilipinas ay husay, ay decisiveness, reliability, hindi yung mabait lang or decente lang, hindi ganon, alright? I've been saying that for years, guys. At ito'y base sa mga surveys, sociological studies, alright? I've been saying this, guys. Yun! Ayan, nagpa-shoutout tuloy si Edmond Malot. Kaya talaga wala kayong timing, no? Nasa gitna ako ng itong very passionate speech, alright? Mamaya na tayo mag-ano dyan. Shoutout dyan. You get what I'm saying, alright? So, come on guys. People really need to do something about this. Kaya kanina, nag-post na naman ako to reiterate na kailangan ng new game plan na. The challenge, sabi ko, for LENI and other progressive leaders, primarily this, how to best protect all good-hearted truth-sayers. Those who speak truth to power and combat historical denialism. So, dapat may suporta sa mga tao, no? Na who are being harassed legally and otherwise for speaking truth to power and fighting against denialism. At the same time, dapat may effective fight also against fake news peddlers. Hindi pwede na ano lang. Alright? Ay nako. Tuloy, kung sino-sino Kim Jong-un at Min Jong-bun ay nakikiuso dito para lang maging relevant or who knows, right? Kaya nga sabi ko, the battle for democracy begins in the hearts and minds of our ordinary folks, ating mga kababayan, and in the fountain of public discourse. Kasi how can you get into the mind and the hearts of people to convince them to fight for the right cause, kung yung wellspring of public discourse is poison already because of itong mga fake news peddlers na yan. Alright? Something has to be done about this, guys. Okay? Something has to be done about this. Now, okay nang bahala dyan. Matagal ko na sinasabi yan. By the way, kanina, may clarification na rin may clarification si Secretary DSWD Erwin Tulfo na talagang obvious na fake news talaga nangyari. Secretary Tulfo, ito ang kanyang ukol sa pagbisita ng dating VP Robredo sa ahensya. Opo, nagpa-appointment po siya para bumisita sa DSWD. At tinanggap natin ang kanyang appointment sa Angat Buhay Representative. Alam namin natin na isang foundation ito. Alright? Ito yung sinabi niya kanina.
Tinanggap naman po natin ang kanyang appointment as Angat Buhay kang representative. Alam naman po natin na isa pong foundation ito.
Yes.
Ang napag-usapan po, Katunying, ay may mga volunteers daw po sila na maaaring makatulong sa DSW, yung mga volunteers na mga nasa malalayong lugar, sa mga liblib na lugar. So sabi ho niya na baka makatulong kami sa pagbibigay ng informasyon at pahati rin ng tulong yung mga bayan na malalayong lugar. Tinanggap naman nun natin, Katunying, dahil ito naman po ay voluntary at libre naman po ito mga informasyon na ito. So, pumayag po tayo.
O, yun pala eh. So, ayan. Straight from Secretary Tulfo. Talagang he is making that clear na yung mga sinasabi na nagmaganda lang si LENI at mga ganyan. It's totally fake news, guys. Totally fake news yan. Alright, ulitin natin na. Ito yung sinabi ni Erwin Tulfo. Opo, nagpa-appointment po siya, referring to Vice President Leni Robredo, former Vice President. At tinanggap namin po. Okay? Oh. Ito na talaga. Obviously, fake news talaga yung ginagawa nila. It's really disappointing to see na something really is not being done about this. Ibang klase na yan. Hanggang kailan ba tayo ganyan? Right? Anyway. Mamaya na ako ng Miyamoto Musashi. Okay. Para mag-zen tayo. Alright, balikan natin ito So let's talk about the important issue of budget cuts, no? So, may proposed budget tayo for next year, guys. So, the budget should help us to have economic recovery. Katulad ng pinag-usapan natin nung isang buwan pa, ang priorities po ng BBM administration is agricultural development and post-pandemic economic recovery. Kaya nagkaroon po ng meeting ng economic cluster ng mga kanyang technocratic appointments bago pa na-inaugurate si President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. So for few months already, and for the very first time in a very long time, guys, yung outgoing administration and ingoing administration, may harmonization po sila ng kanilang budget. So much so na even though malaki yung say ng dating administration, meaning Rodrigo Duterte administration, together with the previous Congress in determination of the budget for 2023, may say na rin ngayon yung bagong administration dahil malapit po sila sa dating administrasyon. And of course, marami rin silang aliado na nanalo dyan sa legislatura, no? And yung Speaker of the House, yung Senate President ay malapit po sa ating presidente on so many levels. No? So, speaking of that, I think I fully support the effort of the new president and the administration para mag-focus dito sa economic recovery and all. Nevertheless, we also are beginning to see some significant elements of budget prioritizations that say a thing or two about where this administration wants the country to go. All right? Una-una, on the more controversial side, ito na naman yung issue ng confidential fund, no? So ito, wala akong sinasabi. So mukhang yung Office of Vice President under Leni Robredo had 0 piso for yung tinatawag na confidential expenses, etc. Alright? Confidential expenses, ayon sa Commission on Audit, refer to, quote, expenses pertaining related to surveillance activities in civilian government agencies that are intended to support the mandate or operations of the agency. Surveillance. Okay. Examples for the usage of these funds include, but are not limited to, purchasing of information for peace and order, renting of transport vehicles for confidential activities, renting of safe houses, purchasing of supplies needed for confidential operations that cannot be done through regular procedures without it being compromised, payments of rewards to informants, prevention of illegal activities considered dangerous to the agencies. So, under the previous Vice President Leni Robredo, sa pagkaalam po natin, 0 ang kanilang confidential funds, no? Itong expenses pertaining to related to surveillance activities and all of those things that I mentioned. But now, dito sa proposed budget, there's a proposed amount of 4.5 billion pesos set for confidential intelligence expenses sa administration ngayon. 2.25 billion was allotted for So I mean, ang laki guys. Ito, 4.5 billion. Puro confidential fund. Now, it looks like 500 million pesos of that will go to the office of the vice president. All right? Okay. Dun sa minention natin kanina. And so ito, so 4.5 billion pesos confidential fund. Ayan ha, lahat yan na resibo, okay? Resibo nandito yan. All right? Ano sinasabi niya? Ito, basahin niyo yan. Inquire yan. Alright? Ayan, 4.5 billion. Ito, 500 million sa VP naman. Alright? Ayan o. Yahoo, Google nyo na yan. Okay, andito yan. So I'm just reading. And I also read the legal definition of what confidential expenses refer to. No? So ito yung allocation dun sa General Appropriations Bill or GAB, no? So with which will determine yung budget for the government, all government agencies, all branches next year. All right? Ito ha. So on 23 August, the national government requested Congress for a 2.31 billion budget for the Office of the Vice President, headed by Sara Duterte. 500 million of which is for confidential expenses. All right? Andito ulit ha. Basahin niyan. Okay? Andito lahat yung detalye. I'm just reading. Okay? Now, obviously, some people are saying, what is the justification for this? But to be clear, we have seen this whole confidential fund thing getting kind of institutionalized in recent years. No? So in fairness to the current president, it's not like sila yung nagsimula nito. No? All right. Now, while we have all of these confidential funds, no? All right. Again, 4.5 billion pesos. At the same time, guys, eto na. Kinakat naman yung budget ng iba. Kasama dyan yung UP system, which is facing billions of pesos in budget cuts. Ulitin natin ito. So ito po yung Intel funds, yung confidential funds na hiningi. Ito naman yung binabawasan dito sa leading university natin sa bansa. University of the Philippines. I'm sorry, University of the Philippines is number 1 in the Philippines by far. No other school comes close. You know what I'm saying? I'm not being biased. I've taught at LaSalle, at Ateneo, at San Beda, etc. But UP is still number 1 by far. And UP is now facing budget cuts of more than 2 billion pesos. Even the Philippine General Hospital, PGH, is also facing budget cuts. So the proposed 2023 budget for the University of the Philippines system has decreased by almost 2.5 billion ayon sa National Expenditure Program from the executive branch. No? Ayan. Okay? Lahat yan, base sa fact, hindi katulad ng mga Kim Jong-un boys, no? The copies of yung NEP, yung tinatawag na National Expenditures Program, ay na-upload po sa Department of Budget and Management website nung Monday. Kaya under Volume 1 covering the state universities and colleges, yung SUCs, the UP system gets a proposed 23.1 billion funding for 2023, which looks like more than 2 billion pesos lower than what we had in 2022, which was 25.6 billion. Samantala po, yung budget ng Philippine General Hospital, ayan. By the way, meron na ba tayong secretary ng DOH? Meron na ba tayong secretary ng DOH? In the meantime, yung budget naman ng Philippine General Hospital po ay bumaba din. What the numbers I see here is 893 million pesos. So medyo lumalapit sa 1 billion pesos. This is just when, guys, we need to really to make sure yung healthcare sector natin makarecover from this pandemic, no? While yung provision for medical indigents did not change, which remained at around 500 million pesos, hospital services program went down from 6 billion to 5.4 billion lang in 2023. Alright? Ito, hospital services program. Ang laki ng slash, almost a billion. No? So much for prioritization. The education sector's budget, although in fairness, sinong DepEd Secretary increased from 788.5 billion in 2022 to 852.8 billion in 2023. Right? And overall, health also kind of increased, although slightly from 268 to 293 billion, and agriculture from 132 to 184. So I fully support the current administration's effort to push for higher budget dun sa education, overall healthcare, and also sa agriculture sector. This is good. I support this. But bakit bumaba yung budget ng UP, the leading university system in the country. Yeah. And at the same time, daming budget for confidential funds. Okay. All right. The other thing we also have to discuss is this. So, mukhang bati yung budget dun sa... So, let's be clear, walang ganyan confidential funds si Leni Robredo nung VP siya base dito sa reports na tayo. So, this is a report from 2 years ago which makes it very clear nung si Leni ang Vice President, walang mga ganyang confidential fund na yan. Whether 500 million, billion, whatever, no? So, she made it very clear at lumabas ito dapat dun sa 2019 Annual Financial Report of the Commission on Audit na clearly walang ganito walang mga ganitong confidential intelligence extraordinary miscellaneous funds CIF, no? All right. So the Robredo office made it very clear na wala silang ganon. At yung spending nila was among the lowest, yung Office of the Vice Presidency, in the entire government. All right? And of course, compared to our vice presidents and our. All right? So Leni was clarifying that they're not into that whole intelligence funds and all of that, right? But now, things are changing, right? So overall, 4 billion pesos po yung confidential funds na hinihingi. All right? Okay. Now, the other thing, which is also interesting and raised ng some of the progressive legislators sa ating Kongreso, is yung budget cuts for 4 key agencies na in charge doon sa preservation ng ating kasaysayan at kultura at historical memory especially, no? So if you look at again at the 2023 National Expenditure Program NEP, mukhang may reduction na mangyari sa National Commission for Culture and Arts NCCA, National Historical Commission of the Philippines NHCP, National Archive of the Philippines NAP, and National Library of the Philippines. Yung NCCA, yung National Commission for Culture and Arts, is facing an 83.9% budget cut. Wow. Crazy. Alright? From 156 million, 25 million na lang yung budget nila. The proposed budget from National Historical Commission of the Philippines, mahalaga yan because dito papasok yung martial law, historical revisionism, denialism, fighting against those things, ayan. Pagdating naman sa kanila, dun sa National Historical Commission, NHCP, their budget is down by almost a third, 27.2%. Habang dun sa NLP naman, National Library of the Philippines, 22.6%. Alright? Yan. Yung NEP naman, pinag-usapan natin, 83% yung cut. Pero yung NHCP, almost 30% yung cut. Right? Almost a third. Yung National Historical Commission. So malaking issue yan because according to one legislator, this supposedly reflects that the current administration, quote, does not care about history. Quote, I'm quoting, that the Philippines has entered the age of historical disinformation and distortion, and these budget cuts on key agencies of history and culture will make Filipinos even more vulnerable to historical revisionism. I would rather say historical denialism. So, sobrang meager daw yung funds na binibigay sa mga key agencies, tsaka even dun sa Philippine General Hospital and Social Welfare Services, parang napakakulang, no? So, sabi ng progressive legislator na yan, will continue to fight for the truth and rights of Filipino people and reject all moves to completely erase the atrocity under the Constitution. As I said, budget allocation says a lot. So, on one hand, we have good news, which is tataas yung budget for education, overall for health, also for agriculture. 100% I'm support of that. At the same time, suddenly we have 4 billion pesos for, ayan na naman, confidential funds, mga ganyan. Right? And then, budget cuts sa UP, budget cuts sa PGH, budget cuts sa National Historical Commission, budget cuts dun sa National Archives, yung mga ganun, yeah. So, you know, that's something we have to pay attention to and look at it. And we have to analyze over the next year or so, how is this going to impact the ability of our government agencies to uphold collective memory, to ensure that progressive values are preserved, as long as, of course, they are in consonance with our Constitution and national interest, and how historical revisionism and denialism is not being facilitated by the state of affairs. No? So yun ang mga bagay na dapat titignan natin. So, am I surprised? No, I'm not surprised at all. But I'm a bit surprised by how big some of the cuts have been. No, at the same time, I'm glad. I'm glad. To be fair, I'm glad also that the budget for education is increasing. Although, of course, DepEd Secretary. We also are happy that the budget for agriculture is increasing. Of course, Agriculture Secretary, diba? All right. So, and also, of course, for health in general. But the PGH reduction, I don't know. That was kind of. I think we need more explanation. To be fair naman, I think dapat imbitahan ang Department of Budget Management chief to explain why some of this and to also explain to us what's going on here. What is the justification for this? All right? At saka yung mga confidential fund, we have to understand why this is justified. We have to understand this more. But of course, they're gonna say, it's confidential issue kaya confidential fund. Eh, wala na. Uwi na. Finish na. Alright. Maraming salamat, guys. I need to head to my next appointment. So let me say thank you so much dun sa mga sumuporta sa atin, nagbigay ng stars, etc. Nagbigay ng nice comments, supportive comments. Thank you kay Naomi Tablate, as always. Kay Jocelyn Lomberio. Ayan, talagang supporters, todo support yan. Thank you rin kay Margaret Rodriguez. Thank you rin kay Ma'am Fanny San Miguel, as always. Kay Katrina Paladin Frias. Thank you. Mukhang wala pa yung iba. Marami pang absent today. So let me thank everyone for pitching in, for supporting us. Thank you kay Eddie Chu, kay Aaron Christopher Distrito. Good afternoon. Salamat for joining us also. Rovlin Catalogo, thank you for joining us. Jojo Arroyo, Lita Avendano, Norjaline Dalmasio, thank you very much. Edmond Malot, thank you for joining us. Edmond Palgan Malot, again. John Gabriel Nava, talagang magandang hapon din kay Annabel Gamoras. Shout out naman dyan kay Josh Saldivar. Oh, by the way, shout out din dyan kay Sir Ernie again. Kanina dun sa sa BMW sa EDSA, may bibili tayo souvenir dyan sa isang cousin natin na medyo social. Alright. Wala natin ng dyan. Coupon card. Alright. Thank you, Sir Ernie. Thank you so much. Salamat. Thank you so much sa lahat ng mga bibigyan ng suporta and also for being with us. God willing, I'll talk to you guys soon and hopefully we can diversify the discussion and have, again, much more international discussion soon. But in the meantime, at least we were able to a bit break down yung latest sa ating national budget. And kamusta naman, diba? What does it say about the state of affairs at priorities ng administration ngayon? Salamat again, guys, for everything. Thank you so much. God bless. Hasta mañana. Adios.